In today's video, we're combining Cycle Storm along with Reanimator. It's Pauper, it's Mono-Black, it's budget, and it's super sweet. Let's go check it out. This video is proudly sponsored by Card Market. We're trying something a little different here at the Epic Storm today. Budget content specifically for Pauper Cycle Storm. You might be thinking, Pauper is already budget friendly. Well, typically my average Cycle Storm list is about $200, so this is an even cheaper list, but it's not full budget because it's still a little bit expensive. So I would like to clarify that in the beginning because people get upset when they think that something isn't budget enough or whatever. People get weird on the internet, let me tell you. So the deck list in front of you today, if you play all of the cheapest versions that exist, you can buy it for $78. That is the price, and 48 of that is literally just Cabal Rituals. You can't play the deck without Cabal Ritual. It's a mandatory card. However, there's no Lotus Petal today, and that's a question that is often asked here at the Epic Storm. So what can you play instead of Lotus Petal? Well, I think you can't just replace Lotus Petal one for one. You have to structurally change the deck, which is what we're doing. And then another question is, have you ever considered Unearth? These questions are asked over and over again on my videos, and the answer is yes. I've been playing Cycle Storm since 2021, and that's 4 years ago at this point. If you go back and look at my first Cycle Storm video, it was February of 2021. So yeah, I mean, it's been a great 4 years. I love this deck. It's my favorite Pauper deck, and I've played a lot of Unearth builds early on. But then the deck evolved away from needing Unearth because honestly, I just don't think it needs it. But if you can't afford Lotus Petal, it's a great alternative. And you get to be mono-black, so you get to run 7 basics, which means you get to support Troll of Khazad-dûm. Well, if you're playing Troll of Khazad-dûm, cards like Exhume become really interesting. So with Exhume and Unearth, you don't need Lotus Petal for red mana to play Drannith Stinger, and you don't need white mana for your Drannith Healer. Okay, so you've escaped the need of Lotus Petal, and now you're like a pseudo reanimator strategy where you have a backdoor into Troll of Khazad-dûm or even a Horror of the Broken Lands to beat your opponent down. And this is how you actually beat Graveyard Hate, is with Exhume. Because when you're mono black, you don't gain access to shatter effects. So Relic of Progenitus, now Spellbomb, those are cards that typically you would want shatter effects for. When you're mono black, instead you try to go around them with things like Exhume. You play Exhume, your opponent exiles your graveyard, and then before Exhume would resolve, you could cycle a Horror of the Broken Lands or Troll of Khazad-dûm, something along those lines. We also have a pivot plan in the sideboard today, where against a mono red, you can bring in Unexpected Fangs, Exhumes, and Drown in Sorrow, and just become a large reanimator deck, and wipe their board and attack with a large creature that has lifelink. That is the idea in that matchup. So we have some stuff going on. It's still your classic Cycle Storm deck. You're looking to fill your graveyard full of cycling creatures, Dark Ritual, Cabal Ritual, play a large Songs of the Damned into Reaping the Graves, and then you would play Unearth and sting your opponent to death as you cycle through. That is the idea behind today's deck list, and it's, still $78, but it's as budget as it can get. I know that most tier 1 Pauper decks are $40 to $50. This is slightly more. But I think if you're looking to play this deck, this is what I would play if you can't afford the Lotus Petals. But I also think there might be something here. Maybe there's something with playing Troll of Khazad-dûm and Exhume in Pauper Cycle Storm. And you could, in theory, this could be like the way forward. If this ends up being good, I could see expanding on this deck list, adding in Lotus Petals, things like that. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Why don't we just hop on in and play to see if there's the potential here. And I'll see you in the first match. Don't go anywhere. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. You can also show your support by becoming a member of this channel. You get sweet perks such as badges, emotes, early access to videos, exclusive members-only content, and access to our members Discord section. As you increase the tiers, there are other rewards such as shop discounts, sideboard guides, and even free donation decks. Click the join button down below to find out more. We also have other ways you can support us, like theepicstorm.com/shop or submitting a donation deck via theepicstorm.com/donation decks. That's enough for now. Let's play some Magic. Welcome to match number 1. We are on the play with Pauper Cycle Storm. Yeah, we'll keep this. So I do have to admit there's a small theme to this week, and it's mono black. I recorded Mono-Black Saga Storm in Legacy, and then I had a donation deck that was Mono-Black Belcher. And I thought, well, I've already recorded 2 Mono-Black decks this week. Let's turn it into a theme. And I decided to make this Pauper budget Cycle Storm video. So I hope you appreciate the theme. And I even dressed the part, which I thought was a little amusing. So hopefully we crush today with Cycle Storm and have some fun. Let's cycle a Horror of the Broken Lands. Looking for another land. We missed and found an Unearth. So if the Unearths were Lotus Petals, hypothetically, you could have had Horror of the Broken Lands there. But it looks like we're facing Golgari Gardens, which isn't a great beatdown matchup anyway. Looking for lands. Let's cycle an Imposing Vantasaur. We find a Troll of Khazad-dûm, so we're guaranteed a land next turn. We'll move to cleanup. Get rid of Monstrous Carabid. 4 creatures in the graveyard. They play a bridge. Oh, they're Broodscale. Okay. We are not ready to win, so we're in a little bit of trouble here. We'll cycle for a basic swamp. We haven't drawn any rituals yet, which is the problem. Cycle a Horror of the Broken Lands. We have to hope that they don't have the win. I'm 25% of the way through the deck, and I have not seen any of my 12 rituals. They Deadly Dispute. They play a basic forest. If this is Duress, okay, so it's not Sadistic Glee. If it was Sadistic Glee, we would be dead. They probably take the Reaping the Graves, if I had to guess. And they do. So now we're mana and Reaping the Graves away. We'll get hit by the Broodscale. We will cycle Drannith Stinger. They still have 7 cards in their hand. We find another Unearth. These Unearths are not good. I guess that this is one of the downsides of... I would rather have Lotus Petals here. Okay, so I could play Unearth to put a Stinger in play as a blocker. But their deck does have removal in it. I guess we'll cycle. Maybe I'll draw into another land. I don't. Pass the turn. They didn't have the win last turn. Shambling Gas. Okay. Another Deadly Dispute. Okay. Please don't have the win. Twisted Landscape. So a card that I'm not playing in the sideboard, because it's a budget list that you could play in Mono Black, would be Snuff Out. Just because when you're running 7 swamps, Snuff Out does tend to be pretty good against Basking Broodscale. So if you were to make this deck more expensive, I would be interested in Snuff Out in the sideboard and Lotus Petal in the main deck. But we were trying to be a budget deck today, so that was not in the cards. But I'm just letting you know that these are options that you have. There's a Songs of the Damned. Let's cycle Imposing Vantasaur. Another Exhume. Well, Songs of the Damned. Cycle Drannith Stinger. Well, I guess, hold on. Let's bring back this Drannith Stinger. We'll cycle this one. Deal them 1. Draw Dark Ritual. Let's play Unearth, getting back this Stinger. Play Dark Ritual. Cycle the Drannith Healer. This will deal them 2 and we'll draw a card. Another Dark Ritual. So I guess we'll cycle the Unearth here. They take 2 down to 15. We'll draw. Reaping the Graves. Let's go. Alright, so we'll have 4 mana left when all is said and done. So we want to select Street Wraith first, and then the other creatures. And I will not be returning Troll of Khazad-dûm. I'm expecting that I'll draw into a land at some point, and I don't want to bring back a creature that only draws into more lands. Another Street Wraith here was tremendous. So this will cycle. Another Reaping the Graves. Cycle the Horror of the Broken Lands. We're just a few mana away from lethal here. Another Songs of the Damned or a Cabal Ritual would get the job done. Cycle the Healer. That's the Songs of the Damned, and that's the game. So Unearth, I don't think actually made a huge difference this game, other than we ended up using it because that's what the deck does. Like, our deck is designed to. But I do think it made it a little bit harder, but ultimately it ended up not mattering. Alright, we're just going to keep cycling. I did restart Magic Online before I started recording, so we're experiencing a little bit of lag. So I'm nervous about Cycle Storm in a video with lag, but you know, I signed up for it. This is what we're going to do. We have stolen game number 1 from arguably the best deck in the format, the Jund Basking Broodscale deck. All right, let's make this a little larger so we can actually see our cards. Do I want any of this? You could bring in Duress just to discard Sadistically, but I think that's a losing play pattern. I guess you could get rid of the Exhumes and only rely on Unearth. Bring in a couple copies of Duress. That's a decision we could make. I'm good to try this. Duress also discards Weather the Storm. No lands, but the rest of the hand is very good. I believe you're supposed to mulligan. We'll keep this. Bottom, Songs of the Damned, which seems crazy, but we're likely to shuffle our deck with a Troll of Khazad-dûm at some point. And this way, the Songs of the Damned can't be discarded, and when we need it later, we'll have access to it. They've taken a mulligan to 4. Okay, digging hard for that graveyard hate. They play a bridge. We draw Songs of the Damned. We'll play our swamp and pass. Basic forest. That's a Broodscale. We'll cycle the Street Wraith into Troll of Khazad-dûm. So next turn I could play land, Dark Ritual, Cabal Ritual. I'll end up being 1 mana short from hardcasting the Troll, so we'll cycle it. Grab a swamp. We draw another swamp. We'll pass the turn. They Cleansing Wildfire. So if they have Sadistic Glee, they could try to win next turn. Well, I guess if they had Glee, they could have played it this turn, because they had the swamp plus the 2 mana to adapt the Basking Broodscale. End step, we will cycle the Unearth. So now we have 3 Unearths left to win the game with. Reaping the Graves. Let's cycle the Drannith Healer here. Only 2 creatures in the graveyard to win with makes me a little uneasy, but oh well. I will pass the turn. I don't think it's a good idea to try to win in this spot. We'll pass. This would be a good matchup to have Snuff out in, but once again, this is a budget video. They're going to adapt. Just to give them the fear, I'm going to click on my Dark Ritual and then click Cancel. Make them think that I might have something here. You can bluff in Magic Online just like you can bluff in Paper. I don't know if they'll buy it, but they did not. Alright, so we're dead. They attack. We'll pause and then click OK. And they have it. So we will concede. So last turn, if I had gone Dark Ritual Cycle, we would have drawn into Healer, into another Swamp. I don't think that would have gotten there, but who knows. That was on a mulligan to 4. Good for them. Alright, we're on the play. This hand is fine. We'll keep. Play the Swamp, pass the turn. They play Shambling Ghast. Okay. End step, we will cycle the Troll of Khazad-dûm. Go grab one of our basics. Play the Swamp. Pass. So this hand is actually looking pretty good right now. What we need to happen is that we need to cycle into a Reaping the Graves, and we could try for a turn 3. Basic Mountain. Ichor Wellspring. Okay. They swing. We'll take it. End step. Cycle the Monstrous Carabid. Cycle Drannith Stinger. Another Street Wraith, which is very good assuming we find a Reaping the Graves. Cycle Street Wraith. You could return the Drannith Stinger here trying to ping them, but I think that's a trap. We just need to cycle here. Cycle, cycle, cycle. We're 1 card short of Threshold right now. Let's cycle the Monstrous Carabid. So I can Songs of the Damned for 7. And then we have possible 4 looks. I think we're supposed to try to move. Cycle the Drannith Healer. There we go. Alright, so now we can Cabal Ritual. Cabal Ritual. Unearth, returning the Drannith Stinger. We'll cycle Horror of the Broken Lands. Storm is only 4 right now. We'll play the Swamp. Cycle Barrenmoor. They go to 18. Another Stinger. We'll cycle that. They go to 17. We'll cycle Barrenmoor. Cycle Stinger. Down to 6 mana. So we're running out of mana here. Down to 5. Duress. So that gives me 1 more card to return at the cost of a mana. We'll take the Sadistic Glee. Reaping the Graves. So we want to return Street Wraiths first, just because we could cycle them into Cabal Ritual or something else. Okay, so we'll cycle Street Wraith. I go to 11, they go to 13. We're going to hold this in case I draw into Cabal Ritual. I want 2 mana available. Another Unearth. Cycle Street Wraith. We did not hit any mana, so this would be our last cycle this turn. Dark Ritual keeps us alive a little bit longer. Cycle the Drannith Healer. I'm at 7. Another Dark Ritual. Cycle Monstrous Carabid. They're at 8. So I could just return the last 2 creatures. I could play Unearth, and then I'd be at 2 mana, and I could cycle 2 things, and they'd be at 4. Or I could try to continue cycling here to spike. I don't know if it actually benefits me to put them to 4, so I think I'm supposed to cycle trying to hit like Cabal Ritual or something. Troll of Khazad-dûm, I don't want to cycle that. Cycle the Monstrous Carabid. So my last thing in the graveyard is a Stinger that would return. And now we'll return the Stinger. I've already played a land, so I shouldn't cycle the Trolls. We'll cycle Stinger, they'll go to 5. And we'll pass. They do have a Duress, so they can discard my Reaping the Graves, or they could go after the Unearth. They drew an Insight. That was very good for them. So they get to draw 3 cards this turn cycle. And if I attack them, they can block and make a treasure. I don't know if that's something I want to do. Let's bring back Drannith Stinger. Cycle a Troll of Khazad-dûm. This puts them to 3. We'll grab a basic, play it, and we just have lethal here. We'll cycle another copy of Troll of Khazad-dûm, grab the Swamp, and then cycle a Drannith Healer. We got there. We beat, arguably the best deck in the format. So many people want Broodscale combo banned, and we just beat it with budget Mono-Black Cycle Storm. We're 1-0 to start off this Pauper League. Hopefully we get some more sweet wins. Stick around and find out if we do. Moxfield.com is the easiest way to build a Magic deck online. They support over 30 formats, including Legacy and many other Eternal formats. There are so many options to view decks the way that you want, from text view to individual cards, mana value, and even card price. There's also light mode and dark mode. My personal favorite feature is card tags. This way you can sort cards by function. Moxfield supports collection tracking, Scryfall search, decklist feedback, and so much more. Follow me on Moxfield.com so you can stay updated on all of my decks. Match number 2, we're on the draw with Pauper Cycle Storm. Budget even. Alright, so I do wonder, and this is going to happen because it happens every time that I do budget content. People are like, yeah, but I would like to know what it looks like if it's not budget. I don't plan that far in advance. I know that I would want Lotus Petal and Snuff out. I don't know what else I'd do after that. So if you're asking me what to cut for those cards, I don't know. I really don't. This isn't me trying to be a jerk. It's just I would have to spend time figuring that out, and I don't know the answer to that. Turn 2 Priest of Titania, and they could still play another elf here if they have one. So they're going to be able to dump their entire hand next turn. We'll cycle Drannith Stinger, find Street Wraith. So you could play out Unearth to get a little bit of extra damage in here, but it comes at the cost of cycling a little slower. And if you do find Reaping the Graves, it's better to sit on the Unearth for storm purposes, but also Cabal Ritual Threshold. I think I'm just going to pass. Alright, they have another Quirion Ranger. So they're going to be able to make near infinite green mana this turn. I guess the fear would be a super large Nyxborn Hydra. So right now the Priest taps for 4. You could pick up your Forest and untap it. That would give you 8. Timberwatch Elf, so they have lethal next turn most likely. So now the Priest taps for 5. I don't know what this is. So when it enters, you can create a food token, and then whenever you extend 4, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Sure. Alright, so I'm at 17. On the end step, we'll cycle Monstrous Carabid, and then we'll cycle Imposing Vantasaur. Alright, 3 cards in the graveyard. Exhume, that doesn't help me right now. They're representing lethal, so we have to go for it. We'll cycle Street Wraith, 4 cards in the graveyard. Troll of Khazad-dûm, Dark Ritual. We'll cycle the Troll, just because it gives us an untapped land. So that's 6 cards in the graveyard. Cycle Drannith Healer. So now we have Threshold. Cycle the Street Wraith. We'll play Cabal Ritual with Threshold. Cycle the Stinger. So, we're running out of mana here, and we don't have a Reaping the Graves. And having a blocker doesn't matter versus Timberwatch Elf, because whatever isn't blocked, they end up pumping it 4 times next turn between 2 Timberwatches and 2 Quirion Rangers. We'll cycle the Baron Moor into another Troll. Alright, so we just didn't find anything we needed. We saw 33% of our deck, too. Okay, we'll concede. I do think we want Drown in Sorrows. I don't think that this is a great Exhume matchup, so those can be sided out. And then maybe we'll board out 1 Troll of Khazad-dûm and try this. Alright, on the play for game number 2. So it's a tap land into cycling troll, and then you have one creature. I think this hand's a little risky. I'm going to mulligan. Like, this hand is so close, but I'm going to mulligan. And obviously we're punished. I'll be going to 5. Okay, 5 cards. We will keep 5. Bottom a healer, and actually, I wonder if like the Dranniths are just better in your Exhume deck, not Unearth deck. Alright, we'll play Barrenmoor past the turn. Okay. Cycle a healer. Play the Barrenmoor. Pass. They have Quirion Ranger again. Then Horned Elves. 4 cards remain in their hand. Another Sentinel. Let's cycle the Street Wraith, because if I draw into Drannith Sorrow, I could consider playing it. I don't know if I would, but it's an option. Cycle Stinger. Play the Swamp. Cycle Stinger. We could try to go off with 4 creatures, but I think that's a little risky. We'll just pass. Okay, they're making more mana. Timberwatch Elf. They have 3 cards remaining. They can make more mana here if they so choose. They have 3 more mana open. Priest of Titania, they have 2 cards left. And they're holding open this Jasper Sentinel, so they might have like a Dispel or a Spell Pierce. Songs of the Damned. We'll play Dark Ritual. Another Dark Ritual. So Cabal Ritual is 1 short of Threshold. So I think we're supposed to play this very sad Songs of the Damned. And they're thinking about the counterspell here. They have it. And now we'll play Cabal Ritual with Threshold. Reaping the Graves for 5, but I only have 4 creatures to return. Street Wraith and then the others. So best case scenario, we find Drown in Sorrow, and then like we can put a creature into play. Reaping the Graves, cycle a healer, Street Wraith. This puts me down to 13. Horror of the Broken Lands, cycle a Stinger, another Reaping. Okay, and now the last Stinger will return. I would like Drown in Sorrow, please. Cycle the Stinger. Cycle Troll of Khazad-dûm, I guess. I haven't played a land yet. Cycle Horror of the Broken Lands. We hit Drown in Sorrow. Perfect. We'll play Drown in Sorrow. Do you have Negate? It is, in fact, Negate. I might be dead. Oh, brutal. Too good. And I can Reaping the Graves, but I have to pass. Next turn, they have lethal on board already. They can Timberwatch, play their forest, untap it with Quirion Ranger, and kill me. So we're dead. Brutal. So here I felt like the mono-black plan didn't feel that great. Just we were kind of slow. And I mean, we didn't see it this game. We also mulliganed to 5 this game. But the Unearth package game 1 did not seem particularly amazing. But that happens when you play budget decks. We're 1-1, 3 matches left to go. Looking to make playing your favorite combo deck much easier? Look no further than the Epic Storm Mini Token Combo Pack, which is available at theepicstorm.com/shop for $14.99. This combo token pack comes with 84 double-sided tokens. That includes our classic Storm and mana tokens, as well as fan favorites such as Goblins, Squirrels, and Slime Time Live. But that's not all. We've expanded this token pack to cover a variety of formats with new tokens. Stop on by theepicstorm.com/shop and make an easy decision to elevate your combo game. Alright, we're on the play for the 3rd match, looking to bounce back after that tough loss. This is a very good hand we will keep. I will say that there does seem to be some natural tension between Unearth and how you want to play your games. Because, yeah, you could put Stinger in a play and start cycling, but that's not actually how Cycle Storm plays. When you're playing Cycle Storm, you want that Stinger in the graveyard to return with Reaping the Graves to cycle to draw more cards. Getting up to 20 damage is usually not the tough part about playing this deck. It's drawing enough cards and seeing all that stuff. Maybe I'm just playing the deck wrongly with Unearth in it, but I feel like it's a little bit flawed. And I'm going to continue to cycle here. Playing Unearth to get a creature in a play does not help the situation we're in. They attack with a Bodyguard. Ouch. We do have to worry about Thraben Charm out of mono-white decks. We'll cycle the Vantasaur. We miss. I'll discard the Exhume. We just don't need that. They play a Hyena Umbra. They have 2 cards left in their hand. A Cartouche of Solidarity. That's 6 damage coming in. We'll go to 13. Another land. We'll cycle the Monstrous Carabid. I mean, I could try to win here. You'd have to burn a Songs of the Damned for 4. Or we could just cycle and pass. Next turn they have 7 damage. They would need 5 more? 6 more? Between their draw step and the 1 card they already have. I think I'm going to cycle. If it's a swamp, maybe we'll go for it. It was not a swamp. It was a Troll of Khazad-dûm. We will pass. Alright, 7 damage. I will go to 6. What? Can I not? Okay, there we go. I was like, hold on. 8 doesn't make sense to me. I should have actually cycled the Troll in the upkeep, but I was too busy talking. We'll search out a swamp. Play Cabal Ritual with Threshold. Cycle a Drannith Stinger. Actually, let's return a Stinger. That could have been bait for a Thraben Charm, which is why I did it that way. I don't know if this is a deck that plays main deck Thraben Charm. It could. Cycle Street Wraith down to 4. We'll play Cabal Ritual. Cycle a Drannith Healer. Cycle the Stinger. We drew into another healer, so this will bring us down to 3 mana floating. Cycle the Horror of the Broken Lands. They're at 14. We only have 3 Storm. Dark Ritual. Songs of the Damned. We'll play Songs of the Damned holding priority, and then Reaping the Graves. So this way, when you do it like this, by the time that this Songs of the Damned resolves, it should make more than 11 mana. But this only works when you have a ton of mana floating. Alright, so now we'll cycle. And the goal is that the Songs of the Damned eventually will make more than 11. Just keep cycling. They're at 12. I'm going to hold on to that Street Wraith for now. Cycle. Cycle the Barrenmoor. Another Reaping the Graves. Cycle Monstrous Carabid. And this Reaping the Graves likely wins. Another Unearth. Cycle the Stinger. Well, we haven't actually drawn into very many creatures, so it looks like it's probably going to be a break-even, or similar to a break-even, on that 11 mana. Yeah, okay, I guess we ended up +1. And I could be +2 if I cycled the Street Wraith. Alright, so it ended up making 2 extra mana. We'll bring back Stinger with the Unearth, Stinger with Unearth, Songs of the Damned, and another Reaping the Graves. Okay, we should just target everything. I do think that it probably makes the deck a little easier to play, but I'm not really interested in making my decks easier for the sake of them being easier. I'm more concerned with just having the best deck and elevating myself to play it optimally, rather than trying to make my deck easier because I don't know how to play the better thing. I don't think that this is a good Drown in Sorrow matchup. If we had Snuff Outs, I would side them in here. You could board in a few copies of Duress, because Duress could bait out a Thraben Charm. Let's try 2 Duress. Sure, reasonable hand. Keep. Basic Plains. Vault Scourge. You got it. Another Reaping the Graves. Let's play Duress. Make sure they're not sitting on like a Relic or a Thraben Charm. Ethereal Armor is a good one. Let's take that. Pass the turn. They play the Plains. They play the Trailblazer. And emerged unscathed. Okay. A little surprised they didn't play the Cartouche of Solidarity here, but what do I know? We'll play the Swamp. Pass the turn. So emerged unscathed this turn can now target another thing. And it will target the Trailblazer. Sentinel's Eyes. So there's 1 card in their hand we don't know about at the moment. And now we know 0 of the cards. So there's still the 1 unknown. And now this turn they're attacking for 7, so I'll go to 12. We might get 1 more turn of setup here. We'll cycle Drannith Healer. Cycle the Horror of the Broken Lands. Street Wraith. They have 8 damage next turn, so if they have 4 more in hand, I'm dead. Cycle a Drannith Stinger. Should I try to win? So if I cycle the Street Wraith, Songs becomes 4. If I draw a Swamp, I could cycle Stinger, and that would be 5. Doesn't feel great, but I do think them having 4 damage in hand is not unreasonable. And if they have more than 2, I can't cycle my Street Wraith. We'll cycle Street Wraith. And I missed on the untapped land. Songs of the Damned. Cycle Horror of the Broken Lands. Cabal Ritual with Threshold. Cycle Stinger. We will cycle Barrenmoor. Street Wraith brings us down to 8. Another Cabal Ritual, that's welcome. And now we can cycle this Baron more. Cycle the Horror of the Broken Lands, Dark Ritual, Songs of the Damned for 8, and now Reaping the Graves for Storm 6. So I do think that we're seeing, and I'm not trying to harp on Mono-Black, by the way, I'm trying to show you differences between the build we're playing today and my normal build. So I have struggled to create a high enough storm count so far. That's actually a similar issue I had to the old basics list that some people still play that don't play Deadly Dispute. And I'm just realizing that it's not just those old lists, it's this list too, where without Deadly Dispute, you struggle to actually create a reasonable storm count sometimes. And I was hoping today that Unearth would fill that role, but the problem with Unearth is that it takes the creatures out of your graveyard where you want them. I guess we'll cycle the Troll here. Pull a land out. We still have a land drop too. Cycle the Stinger. Just keep cycling. We're going to hold that Street Wraith for now. Cycle the Horror of the Broken Lands. We'll play Swamp. Actually, I guess there's probably no reason to not cycle down to 2. Alright, I didn't draw an Unearth. So I can return 10 creatures this time. I guess Street Wraith should be on the bottom. Okay. And then the other 2 Street Wraiths is the last 2. I did not return the Troll of Khazad-dûm. I don't actually want that card in my hand. It is best in the graveyard at this point. Songs of the Damned, that's good. Cycle. Keep cycling. Put Barrymore to the graveyard. Cycle the Imposing Vantasaur. Cabal Ritual. So the bottom 3 are all Street Wraith. So I really only have 4 draws left. And with this Unearth, I think I'm going to cast the Song here and return everything. Because if I return everything here, Unearth into Healer allows me to keep cycling deeper into the deck. So we'll bring back the Healer, cycle the Horror of the Broken Lands, and now we can start gaining life, which unlocks the Street Wraiths. And at some point, I'll draw into a Unearth, and we can bring back a Stinger. Cabal Ritual. I'll go up to 6. Play Cabal Ritual. Cycle Street Wraith. I'm at 5. Cycle Street Wraith. 4. So now we can bring back Stinger. Cycle Street Wraith. Okay. We'll cycle Troll of Khazad-dûm. This way we don't draw into one of our swamps with only 17 cards left in our deck. We have 1 swamp left. We'll cycle the Horror of the Broken Lands. Cycle Monstrous Carabid. We're up to 6. They're at 16. We found the other Troll of Khazad-dûm, so this will pull out another land. Okay, we have a lot of good spells left in the deck that we could draw into here. Cycle Monstrous Carabid. 13 cards left in the deck. They're at 15. Reaping the Graves is obviously welcome. Okay. I believe we have 1 Songs of the Damned left. I would like to draw into that. They're at 12. We're at 10. Cycle the Imposing Vantasaur. They're at 11. We draw a Troll of Khazad-dûm. We'll cycle the Barrymore. They're at 10. We're at 12. Healer. Cycle the Healer. Only 8 cards left in the deck. Street Wraith. Okay. We find the Songs that makes 22 mana. I guess I might as well cycle the Troll of Khazad-dûm here. Alright, so we have a Reaping the Graves, 2 Unearths, Duress, a Stinger, and a Vantasaur. We'll play Songs of the Damned. And now Reaping the Graves. Return all of our friends back from the dead. It's actually not all of them, it's just some of them. But now Troll of Khazad-dûm is cool because it doesn't draw a card. It just returns everything, so that's nice. And our opponent concedes. So we've won the match. We're now 2-1 with 2 matches left to go. If you're still watching, make sure to give this video a like, comment, and subscribe. While you're near the description, here's a reminder to use our affiliate links if you're going to make a purchase from Amazon, Card Hoarder, or TCG Player. Just above those affiliate links, you'll find our social channels. Make sure to join those to connect with us. Round number 4, we're on the draw, and I will keep Mountain. We might get to try out the sideboard plan this match. We'll dare an Epic here. It looks like we are in fact facing the red deck. We drew a Healer, which is interesting because now we can theoretically put the Healer into play and then cycle and gain life. They have 4 cards in their hand at the moment. We'll take 1 down to 18. They're going to use the Blood token. Ah, they're actually the Rakdos deck. Okay. Faithless Looting. This will trigger the Sneaky Snacker. Lotleth Giant and Scrapwork Mutt. Are you also Dredge? We'll cycle the Drannith Healer. Dark Ritual, okay. We'll play the Unearth, they bring back the Healer. And then Barrenmoor pass. If they have a burn spell for the Healer, so be it. But I think this is our window to play it. Otherwise, you end up setting yourself turns behind. And I'd rather not do that. So they have land number 3, 3 cards in hand. Another thing, if they are the Rakdos deck, a bunch of their burn spells are only a player-based, and they're not any target. So there's a chance that the healer ends up living here anyway. Molten Gatekeeper. So they might be mono-red. We'll take 2 down to 16. Another Barrenmoor. Let's cycle the Horror of the Broken Lands. Okay, we gain 1. Cycle the Imposing Vantasaur. We're back up to 18. And I think I'm going to pass. I could play out the Barrenmoor, but I think I want to keep that to cycle on a future turn. Like, I could see next turn being a turn where I try to win. We will take 4 damage here, down to 14. Insolent Neonate. The Molten Gatekeeper will ping me here. I'll go to 13. I'm not really sure what... Like, this is not the normal Rakdos Madness burn deck. They're doing something else here. And I'm not quite sure what that something else is. Dread Return Scrapwork Mutt, so they could Lotleth Giant here. But that's not lethal. And they are going to Lotleth Giant. Okay, so I'm at 7. They have 1 card in hand. We will start by cycling this Horror of the Broken Lands. Play a Dark Ritual. Cycle Imposing Vantasaur. This will be the 6th card in the graveyard. Cycle Street Wraith, because that will turn on Cabal Ritual for having Threshold. Okay. And now we can cycle a few more cards. Digging for a Reaping the Graves. Up to 9 life. Play the land. Cycle Drannith Healer. Back up to 10. Let's cycle Barrenmoor. Up to 11. Play the Cabal Ritual. I'm going to sit on this Songs of the Damned as long as I can. I'm worried that we're not going to find a Reaping the Graves. They have 1 card. I could just play Horror of the Broken Lands at 12 life. But it would have to trade with the Lotleth Giant most likely. Next turn they can unearth a Scrapwork Mutt. And then attack for 10. I think I'm supposed to cycle it. I don't think that this is actually a spot for Horror of the Broken Lands. And we draw Reaping the Graves anyway. So now we'll cycle the Stinger. Might as well cycle the Troll of Khazad-dûm. Storm is 3. It's not great. This is what I'm talking about here. We're over 33% of our deck and our storm counts are just so low. Songs of the Damned. When you have Deadly Disputes and Lotus Petals and stuff, it just feels a little smoother. Return Horror of the Broken Lands. Storm 5. We probably want both copies of Street Wraith. Another Horror of the Broken Lands, and Imposing Vantasaur. Why not? There's a long pause there. I think I'm going to return everything instead of cycling 1 by 1. So that way, if they do have something, I can respond. And if I draw into a Songs of the Damned, I can always empty the 5 cards I have, or the 5 creatures with 8 mana floating. Cycle Street Wraith. We're up to 15. Cycle again. Being this low on mana, I'm not going to cycle the Troll of Khazad-dûm. I say that and then I draw Songs of the Damned. Alright, we'll cycle another Troll. Okay, we'll cycle these to thin out the additional lands left in the deck. Increase my odds of drawing into a Reaping the Graves. Up to 17. Cycle the Imposing Vantasaur. We only have 2 cycles left here. Cycle the Drannith Healer. Up to 19. Cycle Horror of the Broken Lands. We have 1 cycle left. I guess I could burn the Dark Ritual, but I'd have to draw into exactly Reaping the Graves. There's 3 of them left, and we have 25 cards left in our deck. My fear here is if I just cycle Stinger and I draw Reaping, we have 3 Storm for next turn. It is so tough to win off of 3 Storm. So I think I'm going to Dark Ritual and just pray that my top card is Reaping the Graves. Cycle. Okay, it's another chance. Cycle. There we go. Songs of the Damned. All you have to do is believe. Believe in the heart of the cards, right? That's what Pokemon is all about. That's a joke. Alright, so with 15 mana floating, I'm just going to return everything. I guess maybe I shouldn't. We'll just cycle. Unearth. Okay, now that I have an Unearth, I will just return everything. I was thinking about if I drew into a songs, but I think Unearth changes the math enough. It's also hard to deny that Unearth was good in this game, because it's gained a lot of life with the Drannith Healer. And now we'll start pinging. Pew pew. Cycle some more dinosaurs. Our opponent refusing to F6, which is their prerogative, but it does make this last a little bit longer. So now each cycle will deal them 2 and will gain life. Cycle the healer. But we have 2 Reaping the Graves left with 18 cards left in our library. And they finally concede. Nice. Okay. So some sort of weird red deck that's like Dredge. Once again, this does not seem like a very good Exhume matchup. Like, I think that this plan might just, like, the Exhume part might not be great. I don't know. Maybe our main deck is just fine. I'll submit. I'm not really sure what they're up to. Like, this is not a typical deck we're facing. Okay. So if this was a basic swamp, we would have a turn 1 Troll of Khazad-dûm. So ideally, I would draw a basic on turn 1, because I think turn 1 Troll of Khazad-dûm would be fairly good. We'll dare an Epicure. Alright, basic swamp. Let's see it. Nope. We'll play the Barrenmoor, pass the turn. They play a land and discard Stinkweed Imp. So they are a Dredge deck. They might be like mono red Dredge. Basking Rootwalla. I mean, their deck is certainly sweet. Alright, we'll take 1 down to 18. I missed on a creature, so Dark Ritual. Actually, I don't want to Exhume. I might have just played myself into a trap here. Whoops. Because why would I want to Exhume a Lotleth Giant into play? I just wasted a Dark Ritual. We'll cycle the Troll. And I can't hardcast it. I'm a mana short. I'm a dummy. Yeah, I should have boarded out the Exhumes. Like, just their potential to get back a Lotleth Giant is too high. That was so bad. I wasn't thinking. They Dredge. So there's mono red Dredge. Molten Gatekeeper. Yep. We'll take 1. Another Troll of Khazad-dûm that doesn't help me. Cycle. Grab a swamp. Play it and pass. Yeah, I messed up this game. I do think that, like, if we had the ability to turn 1 Troll of Khazad-dûm, that would have been good. Like, that probably wins this game. But the situation we're in, the Exhume looks embarrassing. They attack for 3 more. I'll go to 14. Cycle Imposing Vantasaur. Another Vantasaur. And Dark Ritual. We will pass. Hope that I'm not dead. So they can attack for 3, putting me to 11. They have 6 creatures in the graveyard before they dredge. Now they have 7. So Scrapwork Mutt, attack for 5, Dread Return is lethal. And they could even dredge off the Scrapwork Mutt. Molten Gatekeeper, yep. Yeah, we're super dead here. I'm good to concede. This seems really powerful, though. I think I like this more than the green-black base list that I played a while back. We'll get rid of the Exhumes. And maybe let's just try Duress. On the play. This had 1 land in it. 1 land instead of a Reaping the Graves. This would be nuts. We have to mulligan. Ay. I mean, I think we're pressured to keep this. Bottom of Barrenmoor. Play the basic swamp and pass. Faithless Looting. Stinkweed Imp and a Lotleth Giant. We will cycle a Horror of the Broken Lands into another land. Okay, play a swamp, pass the turn. So one thing I do like about this deck is having a bunch of untapped lands, because when you play the other basic list that plays blue and, you know, all those other things, those lists often play fetch lands because you're trying to support blue. With Mono-Black, you just have more untapped mana sources. A Cathartic Reunion. They get to dredge a lot of cards here. 9 creatures currently in the graveyard. 11 now. I see 1 Molten Gatekeeper and 1 Scrapwork Mutt. Like, we could be dead fairly quickly here. Cycle the Imposing Vantasaur. Cycle the Barrenmoor. More lands. Awkward. We'll play Duress. They have no targets. Perfect. Alright. Let's cycle Barrenmoor. Cycle the Monstrous Carabid. Pass the turn. They have land number 3. So they could go Neonate plus Scrapwork Mutt. I think they're short because they could go Molten Gatekeeper, Neonate, and then Dread Return. But that's not lethal either. It's pretty close, but it's not lethal. So now they could play a Neonate. That would bring me down to 17. They attack for 4. Brings me to 14. And then the Voldaren Epicure is 13. Dread Return would put Epicure to the graveyard, but it would cancel out the Lotleth Giant, so they could get me down to like 4-ish life, maybe 3. But I don't think it's lethal. This deck seems sweet though. Mono Red Dredge. And there's the Giant. I'm at 3. I would need such a string of incredible draws to win this game. None of which were basic Swamp. Alright, cycle. Yeah, our deck did not function. So we lose. We are now 2-2 with 1 match left to go. With Card Hoarder, renting your favorite combo deck has never been easier. There isn't a more affordable solution for Magic Online. Want to play the deck in this video? Check out the pinned comment below to easily rent the deck from Card Hoarder. Did you know you can rent the Epic Storm from Card Hoarder for as little as 7 tickets a week? The final round, we are on the play. Yeah, we'll keep. This hand seems fine. Maybe we'll get lucky and draw an Exhume. Pass the turn. We're facing one of the trophy leaders of Pauper, so if we could draw or have a few good draws, that would feel nice. Finish this league with a positive record. Cycle the Troll of Khazad-dûm. Plus, we haven't really had matchups where the Troll Exhume package feels good, and this is definitely a match where I'm interested in that game plan. So I'll cycle a Street Wraith, cycle Street Wraith. We'll cycle again, down to 14. We did not find it. Cycle the Horror of the Broken Lands. Cycle Imposing Vantasaur. Pass the turn. They can now swing for 1. We go to 13. We'll play the basic Swamp and pass. Except they flash in a Spellstutter Sprite. This is usually a tell. I'm not saying that our opponent's definitely going to do it. That they're going to Ninjutsu away the Spellstutter Sprite, returning it to its hand so that way they can use it later. And they don't here. They have 5 cards remaining in their hand. We'll cycle a Drannith Healer. This way, if I find an Unearth, we can put it into play and then cycle to save off some life from their creatures. Cycling Monsters Carabid, Cabal Ritual. Cycle the Troll of Khazad-dûm. Grab a Swamp. We'll play it and pass. Alright, so we've seen 33% of our deck already. They have land number 4. I don't love that because it could mean double Counterspell or Counterspell plus Spellstutter Sprite. So them not playing any cantrips and still hitting all of their land drops, I wasn't really hoping for. We'll cycle the Barrenmoor. We find Exhume. Well, let's try unearthing a Drannith Healer. They're thinking about this Unearth. They Spellstutter Sprite. Okay, they still have 2 cards left in their hand. I'm sorry, 2 open mana, 4 cards left in their hand. A little bit in my own thoughts there. Let's see if they bite down on Exhume. This is some juicy bait. Exhume on the stack. They spell Pierce. I will attempt a Dark Ritual in response. And they have Dispel. So they had triple Counterspell. I was not prepared for that. They still have 2 cards left. We will pass the turn. So now they'll attack for 3. I will go to 6. And they did have Ninjutsu, so now they have a Spellstutter Sprite back in their hand. We have to figure out how to beat a Spellstutter Sprite. They actually have 2 Spellstutter Sprites left in their hand. Well, drawing another Songs of the Damned certainly helps. Let's try Cabal Ritual. Cycle a Troll of Khazad-dûm. Grab a Swamp. Songs of the Damned, which I imagine will be counterspelled. Okay. We'll play the other Songs of the Damned. We have 2 left, and now are you Reaping the Graves for 5? Okay, we need these 5 cards to convert into something meaningful. I'll return 2 copies of Street Wraith. I don't want to return more than that when I'm at 6 life. We'll cycle a Healer. If I find another, what is it called? Unearth, I could theoretically return Healer to gain some life and buy time. Just keep cycling, Reaping the Graves, cycle the Street Wraith. Running a little low on mana. Another Troll. I don't know if I want to waste mana on that. We only have 1 Swamp left in the deck. The probability I draw isn't super high. And now we'll return the Horror of the Broken Lands. Cycle it. We hit Songs. Very good. Now we can cycle this Troll of Khazad-dûm because it's free to do so. Play the songs. Reaping the Graves now for 8. I am not going to return any street rates this time, if I can help it. Alright, it looks like I should return 1. Otherwise, it's just lost value. And I'm likely to find a Unearth at some point here. Just keep cycling. Another Songs of the Damned. That's wonderful. Cycle. Just keep cycling. Cabal Ritual. Mana's not the problem at this point. Okay. 18 cards left in deck. We have tons of mana. We only have 3 more draws. Okay, 15 cards left in our deck. There's an Unearth. I'm going to return everything now. And I will bring back the Healer, because Healer allows me to cycle these street rates, so I get to dig a little bit deeper. Cycle the Horror of the Broken Lands. Up to 3. We'll play Dark Ritual. Cycle the Stinger. I'm up to 4 life now. Cycle the Barrenmoor. Up to 5 life. 12 cards left in deck. There's Reaping the Graves. We'll play Cabal Ritual. Cabal Ritual. Cycle Street Wraith. Okay. Just keep cycling. We'll play Exhume. This allows me to get back a Stinger. Cycle Healer. 13 is the Storm. It's actually not even enough for lethal. Doing my best here. Another Reaping the Graves. We'll play Songs. Okay. Songs of the Damned. From 15. Now we would actually like the Troll of Khazad-dûms. And Street Wraiths. Okay, so with 22 mana floating, I'm just going to return everything. Okay, so let's start by cycling Stinger, because we want those in the graveyard. And I have to make sure to not accidentally deck myself here. Cycle the Healer. We hit an Unearth. We'll play that, getting back a Stinger. We have 5 cards left. Cycle the Horror of the Broken Lands. I've auto-yielded to a bunch of my draw triggers. I will have to get rid of those soon. Cycle a Monstrous Carabid. Draw off the Carabid. There's another Unearth. Let's get back another Stinger. Cycle a Monstrous Carabid. And we actually have enough to kill them now with the Trolls without decking, without even turning off my auto-yields. Dark Ritual. Cycle a Street Wraith. So this will draw me down to 1 card left in deck. Street Wraith down to the final card, which was a Cabal Ritual. We'll play it because I can. Cycle a Troll of Khazad-dûm. And that's lethal. Sweet. We've taken game number 1. I can't help but wonder if maybe we should board into Reanimator here. Grizzly Survivor is very good with Unearth. So is Drown in Sorrow against them. We could do Duress plus Exhume. That's a lot of cards. So when you're doing this, you could leave in part of your Cycle Storm package. You could also just board it out. Like, you could take out Reaping the Graves, take out Songs, and now you're at 63, and you can just remove some creatures that aren't so great, like maybe the Monstrous Carabids, and you're just saying that I will beat you down with Trolls and Horrors and wipe your board with Grizzly Survivors and stuff like that. Like, I think that this actually looks fairly good. I want to try this. I know that not having Reaping the Graves and Song in the deck feels wrong, but I want to experiment. Oh, baby. Is this turn 1 Troll of Khazad-dûm with Duress backup? Sign me up. Let's go. They have turn 1 Fairy Seer. Grizzly Survivor. Alright, so Dark Ritual. We'll cycle the Troll of Khazad-dûm. Grab a Swamp. So I could put the Troll into play right now without burning the Dark Ritual, and then next turn I could go Dark Ritual Duress into Survivor. But if they have like a Boomerang or Snap, I would feel very dumb. So we'll play Duress. And they did have Snap. They also have a Of One Mind. They have Spell Pierce, so we'll play Dark Ritual. Exhume! This is sweet. Pass the turn. They play a Fairy Miscreant. They attack for 1. Drown in Sorrow? Don't mind if I do. Beat down. So they did draw a land. They have Spell Pierce open now. Duress. I don't think we need to play into the Spellstutter Sprite, so we'll just swing and pass. They're at 8. Pass the turn. They flash in Spellstutter Sprite. They attack for 3. I go to 14. Let's attack with Troll of Khazad-dûm. We'll play Duress. And they have another Spell Stutter Sprite. Okay. Cycle Stinger into Dark Ritual. Come on, deck. Nope. Cycle Horror of the Broken Lands. We will pass the turn. They've hit land 3. They play of 1 mind. So now they have to leave back 3 creatures as a blocker. But I think they're just dead to my Drown in Sorrow. What a way to end a league. Drown in Sorrow. Boom. Put that Cabal Ritual on top. Yes, let's go. That was sweet. All right, so yeah, I mean, that was a lot of fun. So what did I think of the deck list? We lacked Storm at certain points. Unearth was interesting. There was a game where I felt like it was incredible versus the Mono Red Dredge deck. Then there were some games where I felt like it had some natural tension with how the deck wants to operate. So is it a viable Lotus Petal replacement? In my opinion, yes. If you can't afford Lotus Petals, this is a good budget alternative. There's no alternative for Cabal Ritual. I'm sorry, there just isn't. But I think that if you can't afford the typical Cycle Storm deck list that runs about $175 to $200, this build could be the build for you. I don't think that the sideboard is perfect. I would play, and I think that you could experiment with this some more. Like, you could put Lotus Petals into the main deck, get rid of these Exhumes, or at least shove the Exhumes in the sideboard. And then you could put Snuff out in the sideboard. I think that those are things that could be fairly good, and they would improve the Mono-Black list. That said, I really missed Deadly Dispute. I missed it a lot. But, you know, not every list plays it. There's people that have success without it. But at this point, I think that it's just so, you know, good for Cycle Storm. I couldn't imagine playing without it. So that's what I think. I think that the Mono Black list is sweet. And there's probably something here if somebody else would like to continue iterating on it. But that's all I've got for today. I really appreciate you watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. And as always, keep storming. Hey, Bryant Cook. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. There's no better way to support our channel. If you're interested in elevating your combo game, visit theepicstorm.com/tutoring for details about our coaching sessions. Don't worry, there's more great combo content coming right up.